using the symbol of a triangle with the world inside. And this is what the UN wants to implement in order to control the world. In other words, this potentially opens the door for the Antichrist to come in and confirm this covenant at the end of.
Craig, I'm so excited to have you back on because you always uncover things that are going on behind the scenes. You're going to be talking about some agendas for the 2025 and 2025 calendar. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that people have no idea about. Now, we're seeing up front a lot of great things that Trump is doing, but still other things are progressing and moving along. Now, do you think Bible prophecy has slowed down with President Trump, getting out of the Paris Agreement? What do you think?
It appears it's sped up, and it gives us a precursor of what is to come, especially within artificial intelligence. That's where we're headed in 2025 through 2029, I'll add.
Okay, and now you were saying before the program, but there is other stuff going on with other countries that want to surpass us as far as AI.
So that would be UK. And so the UK on January 13th issued a blueprint to turbocharge artificial intelligence. And they will deliver a decade for the next 10 years of national renewal as part of a new plan announced on the 13th of January. And this is from the Department for Science, Innovation, and Technology.
Oh wow! So the UK wants to surpass us.
The UK wants to surpass us. So they want AI to drive the plan for change, helping turbocharge growth and boost living standards. And they want to start this within their 15-minute sustainable cities, by the way. So they've mentioned there's that as well in the news. They want this public sector to spend less time doing admin and more time delivering the services working people rely on. So they want AI to control everything. And I'm gonna add in here too that I'm gonna add it later. So there's a big thing I didn't write down, but I'll add it later.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, no. Everyone has to stay tuned because there's a lot of very interesting stuff. And I also just want to thank my members. Thank you for joining. It really, really helps the channel. And thank you for subscribing. Okay, keep on going, Craig.
The UK is dedicated for AI growth zones to speed up planning for AI infrastructure within the next 4 years, using $14 billion and 13,250 jobs committed by private leading tech firms, followed by the AI action plan. The artificial intelligence will be unleashed across the UK to deliver a decade of national renewal under the plan announced. They have, behind this industry, they're agreeing to 50 recommendations for AI. This unveils the details of the government's AI Opportunities Action Plan and will feed AI through cameras to spot potholes and help improve their living standards. This is for roads, but potholes everywhere, so including online crime. So they're going to be monitoring everybody online.
Right. So
that was just announced within the last 2 days.
Wow, very interesting. Before we got started recording, I thought you were going to say, "Oh, China's trying to surpass," but then when you said UK, you really shocked me. Now, speaking of the UK, tell me about that coin.
So, when 2025 came to play, the Royal Mint paid tribute to George Orwell with a coin that plays on the 1984 Big Brother is Watching You. So you have King Charles on one side of the coin and the all-seeing eye on the other side of the coin.
Wow. Okay, but they said George Orwell?
Yes, yeah, it says that right on there. And I tried to purchase the coin actually, but they're not allowing it outside the UK, so I wasn't allowed to purchase it.
Huh. And I also saw that King Charles is going to be filming a documentary with Amazon. And of course, it's all on climate change. So he's pushing all of that. And it'll be, basically on his book, Harmony, which you have talked all about.
And that'll probably be on his Amazon Prime channel as well. He has his own TV channel. So that'll probably be uploaded to that TV channel. So the Prime Minister has just said that artificial intelligence will drive incredible change for their country, from teachers personalizing their lessons. So everything's going to be AI, including your education. And we already see this with pastors now using AI to produce their sermons, by the way. So I've seen that as well, produced online. And supporting small businesses with their record keeping to speeding up planning applications. It has a potential to transform the lives of all working people. But the AI industry needs a government that is on their side, one that won't sit back and let opportunities slip through its fingers. And in a world of fierce competition, we, the UK, cannot stand by. We must move fast and take action to win this global race. Our plan will make Britain the world leader in AI. It will give the industry and foundation it needs and will turbocharge the plan for change. And that's what this whole thing is called. It's called Plan for Change. It's the AI to infiltrate every part of the lives of those within the UK and the Commonwealth. I'll add that as well. And it's a big money scheme. So that means more jobs and investment in the UK, more money in people's pockets, supposedly, but we know that's not going to be true, according to Bible prophecy, and transform public services. So they want, once again, they're going back to this 15-minute city idea, and they want everybody to use their public services, their public bus and bicycle or whatever to get off the use of fuel, like running your car. So this push for AI is going to go till November 2026. This is basically a one-year window where they're going to be pushing for the advancement of AI. And then it feeds through 2028 to 2029. And I do a lot of reading online too. And everything behind this push for artificial intelligence is directly linked to Microsoft and Bill Gates. So I find that very, very interesting. He's the one behind the Stargate initiative. It's Bill Gates. It goes right back to Microsoft. So the UK government will publish its AI commute strategy in the spring of 2025. And their plan is to change lives by embracing AI. Everybody has to embrace AI, so artificial intelligence. And they want to secure the future with AI. And then they have all these 50 recommendations. So set out within the next 6 months, a long-term plan for the UK's AI infrastructure needs to be backed by a 10-year investment commitment. And they want it done by 2030 because by 2030, they'll set their leader in place, the Antichrist.
Right, right. So there's a lot going on between now and 2030.
There's a lot of things going behind the scenes. So it's by 2030. It's not during 2030 or after 2030. It's by 2030. They want this thing set up. So mid to late 2029 is when they want their leader in place. So that's why we've seen this 2030 goal repeated over and over and over again. It's probably appears to be their agenda to set up their world government. So all this push for AI is by the spring or summer of 2025 to launch. And at the latest, one of the later ones is expand the Turing AI fellowships offer, and that's by autumn of 2026. So here we have our 1-year window of pushing this infrastructure for AI to be fully established within 4 years.
But how would that impact the everyday person's life then?
For one, they want to use more fossil fuels, including coal, according to Trump. So this is Trump's side of it, but according to Trump, use more fossil fuels and the energy to be made on site like China is doing. So he's copycatting China for these AI.
Of the data centers?
Of the data centers, yeah. Which, by the way, I live by one, so I can just drive by it and take a picture of it and have the whole thing can operate off of diesel. But now they want to make it 100% that it just runs off of diesel or coal or nuclear on site.
Okay, so it's just so very interesting because it's so opposite.
It's so opposite of the 2030 agenda.
But yeah, why am I trying to make sense out of these people?
And then what it'll actually do is raise the energy prices for everybody that has to rely on energy today. So electricity or whatever, it's going to raise their electrical rates because they're using more of it. So they're going to say there's a shortage, and then the price goes up.
Do you feel that'll happen in the United States too?
That would happen in the United States too. It'd be worldwide. And then one of the final points is to drive AI adoption across the whole country. This is for the UK. And the delivery time is initially summer of 2025, then continuous. So they want this AI fully adopted by the summer of 2025.
So basically, then the UK would be the people would be totally under surveillance, and for us right now, we're enjoying freedoms. But now in the United States, can you talk about? Unless are you finished with that, or do you want to?
No, there's
move
one
on?
more major thing. So on July 8th through the 11th at the UN, there'll be an AI for Good global summit event in Geneva, Switzerland. So the UN meets for this AI for the Good summit to push this artificial intelligence in the summer of 2025. So I find that very, very interesting because we've talked about that in a previous video, AI for the good. And here they are pushing it for July 8th through the 11th. They're going to establish it.
Okay, now speaking of 15-minute cities, even with President Trump being president, it just seems like people like, okay, the LA, Karen, the mayor, with everything that's gone on there, with everything that's gone on in Western North Carolina, they're still talking about building 15-minute cities there. I mean, Karen Bass, said Pacific Palisades will be rebuilt by an outside consultant, and it's going to be more equitable and environmentally sustained. So it's like without authorization from property owners. So it's like they're still pushing along, even though Trump has gotten out of the Paris Agreement. Anything else you want to say regarding that?
My opinion is the 15-minute city plan for like LA, Lahaina, for example, North Carolina, where they wanted a plan by 2030, and it took decades to build what they had before. And I don't see them with Lahaina. They've built completed two houses since the fire over a year ago. And so I don't see the progress being made that these things are going to happen. And with the tribulation so close and all the problems that are going to happen, starting with day one of the tribulation, I don't see how they're going to be that successful with their 2030 15-minute cities. So they will, at some level, they will be. And the Antichrist, it says the Antichrist will succeed. So we know he'll have success with his plan to some level. But whether it's worldwide, I would say probably not, with all the trouble that will come day one of the tribulation. Trump made a speech at the World Economic Forum, and he's been saying that we're entering a golden age of America. But he's doing all the while, he's touting his Project Stargate plan to make America the world capital of AI and crypto. And to me, this is a red flag, what's coming in the tribulation. So I don't think we as Christians need to worry about it, but what's coming after Trump in the next administration can take this and totally flip it on Americans. And we know this will happen towards the end of the tribulation, where everybody must take a certification mark to buy or sell or into work, and it'll show your status of taking something within your body. So that's where this is leading. So he's setting up for this inadvertently, and the next administration would change that, much like what happened in his first administration with what he took in the arm and it was forced under Joe Biden. He said Stargate's plan is to blanket America by doubling its capacity with new data centers, just like the UK. And this is to power the next generation of AI. And so the question is, will this be used to weaponize the American people? And I would say in the future, yes.
Right. There's a lot of good things with AI, just like the internet. There was like good things with the internet, but then there's going to be bad things. But what you brought up before too, like with Stargate and Bill Gates involved with that, it's just, yeah, the players involved in it are definitely very scary.
And the World Economic Forum, their whole agenda for their January Davos meeting was on artificial intelligence, which is leading to COP30 in Brazil, where they're going to address these issues once again. Trump is getting out of the Paris Agreement, which leaves a vacuum for somebody else to come in and strengthen the Paris Climate Agreement, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. This will be at the end of COP30. So it's leaving a vacuum, but actually there's still a year, according to how the Paris Agreement works. There's still a year before the U.S. can completely withdraw from that. So they still have to be involved for the remainder of 1 year.
Yeah. Now I found that interesting. Do you mind my just reading something about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was looking at some implications of U.S. getting out of the Paris Agreement, and it talked about what you said, that we're still obligated for 1 more year, and so there was still some commitments, not because of Trump, but because of Biden. And also, I found this very interesting. They said that when Trump was president the first time, when he withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Agreement, I was so excited when I heard about that, but then I didn't realize other people, other organizations, other governments were pushing even harder. So when you talked about like leaving a vacuum, and I understand it leaves a vacuum for the Antichrist, but it leaves this vacuum where these others want to fill it, because it said it created a leadership vacuum that was filled by other nations, state, local, and business leaders, and that gave them more momentum. So they're still pushing hard, because I was like thinking, when you look in the news, you don't see any of them being nervous about Trump getting out of the Paris Agreement, because they still know that they're pushing for their agenda. Anyway.
And on their website that they just opened up for COP30, they're saying that at COP30, they're going to strengthen the Paris Agreement. So for the 30th time, they're going to strengthen the Paris Agreement, and it's a period between 5 and 10 years.
Yeah, now talking about the COP30, this was something else that I thought was interesting, because I thought, okay, again, if the U.S. is out of the Paris Agreement, that's not going to affect us in any way. But it said the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement it doesn't withdraw us from the U.S. from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that was a 1992 climate treaty. So we're not out of that. And so the U.S. still retains that they can vote in the COP30, the Conference of Parties. So we're not out of that.
No, and what they want to do is to strengthen this before the U.S. leaves. So COP30 is being pronounced as the mega COP, the biggest COP ever, and to strengthen their goals. And the word to confirm in Daniel 9:27 means to strengthen. So somebody's going to come in and strengthen this at the end of COP30, which is planned for November 21st, which is also a new moon, which according to scripture is the first day of a month.
Yeah, they always seem to be on the biblical calendar. Now, who did you say is going to be also from the UK speaking there?
Prince William is planning to go, because these plans change all the time, but he's planning to go to COP30 and to open with a keynote address to give strength to this COP30 agenda. And then King Charles is also keen on going, so that will be announced at a future time. But he will meet with the presidency of COP30 in the coming days and get the momentum going for this event. So the presidency was just announced several days ago, and he's a master at manipulation to try to get a deal at the end of COP.
Now, do you think that would be the covenant, of many?
It's definitely a covenant of many. Whether it is the covenant of many, that's to be determined over time. Stargate is pushing a technocracy where the tribulation time will be controlled by ruling elites, namely Bill Gates. I mean, they've already announced this at the World Economic Forum. So Bill Gates, Microsoft, any of these big players within these big tech companies. The Jeff Bezos is also implied on that as well. So they're mentioning certain leaders that will control things via technocracy for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Now it's interesting because you also had, talked about like technocracy, when on your posts, which you have amazing posts on Facebook, that technocracy has arrived, and it's mixed with transhumanism, and one of the leaders with Stargate and all of that, or AI, would be Sam Altman. And I wanted to just read a quote from him. Advancing AI may require changes to the social contract. The entire structure of society will be up for debate and reconfiguration. So it's all connected to transhumanism.
Yeah, and they say transhumanism is not a war that one individual or organization can win. It's up to us, the fellow human beings, and collective humanity on how we navigate AI's subversion of governments, militaries, economies, communities, and our bodily autonomy. So it's control of our own bodies through AI. And so this was presented by the techno musicians, and specifically Anima. It's called End of Genesis. So they're using these biblical terms. And these shows have been going on throughout the whole world. And it began in Las Vegas the last week of December in 2024. And the group is called Afterlife. and refers to transhumanism as the second coming and the rise of Adam. And right on their website, they're teaching a man's true destiny is within himself, and he will know everything, both good and evil. So it's just like what we see in Genesis 1. So basically, they're telling you you're going to be just like God if you embrace this AI.
Right, and there's so many why so many people are going to want it because they're going to present it too, like, oh, you won't be sick or you can live forever.
And there's websites online coming right now that are saying by 2030 that man will be immortal. That's the goal. And you kind of have to wonder when it says in Revelation that people will want to die because of all the trouble, and they'll call the rocks to fall on them, but they can't die. And it makes you wonder if they have taken something that causes them to not be able to die, just like the movies, like we saw in the 80s.
Well, and usually the movies are predictive programming of what they want for the future, and there's more with 2025 of the predictive programming that I'm going to get to, but keep on going.
But it goes on, regardless of who's occupying the White House or who's occupying the UK Prime Minister position, the UN global peace system marches forward at full speed. The United Nations is calling on all governments around the world to fight climate change and other emergencies by mandating biometric digital ID systems, giving governments worldwide the ability to tag and track masses in their every move. And this begins in the US, by the way, is enforced in the US. You have to have a form of digital ID to fly by May 7th of 2025. So the biometric digital ID requires the recipient to upload a face scan, eye scan, or palm scan, or other unique identifier, which is then integrated into a central system and tracked by an app on a person's phone. So, for example, I had to do this the other day. I went to Home Depot and needed to rent a piece of equipment, and I had to use the Clear app, and you have to take a picture of yourself and prove your identity using your driver's license and your picture that you've just taken. So now the Clear app has a digital copy of your face in order to rent equipment at Home Depot.
Whoa, okay. I didn't know it was to that point.
Yeah, I tried to get out of it, but you can't. So you cannot buy or sell unless you do this digital ID.
Ah,
So it's getting very, very close to this certification mark, which they want implemented by 2028, 2029. So it's about a 4-year window. And they will have to report on it in 2028, I believe in 2028, or I believe at the UN as far as the Pact for the Future.
right, but meanwhile, the real ID enforcement is supposed to begin in May in 2025.
Yeah, May 7th of 2025. And this Clear app is being implemented everywhere. So there's grocery outlet, Fred Meyer is using it within the state of Washington. So to buy your groceries, now you have to use this app in order to buy your groceries.
Okay, it started to make me think that I'm going to buy a mask and a wig.
Eventually, the plan is to have, according to Yuval Noah Harari, there's a plan to have a surveillance device under the skin. And that's been reported on the last couple of years. So they're being very open about this, that that's what's coming. And if governments assign digital identities to their citizens, they can track populations more easily in a environmental disaster. So they're predicting basically that there's environmental disasters coming, and they'll be able to track their citizens in these disasters, or what they call black swan events. So what they're doing is trying to use the news media to whip up fear in the population. So we saw this back in 2020, and dividing the people against each other. And well, they have snitch lines, and if you're not farming in a certain manner, or you're not shopping in a certain manner, or you haven't taken this or that, there'll be people snitching on you. So this is really what it's setting up for during the tribulation. So we're not there yet, but the setup for it's all being put in place.
Right, and that's really like that's the Bible prophecy that children will come against their parents. I mean, that's just one of the signs of the end times.
And then once the government has all this data, it can force citizens to change their energy consumption habits. So we already see this perhaps by use of smart meters, but also within like South Africa, for example, they just turn off your electricity for load shedding. So if people are using too much electricity, they just shut you off. So I find that very interesting that these poor countries, they just shut you off already. But here in the US, it's only if you don't pay your bill, then they'll shut you off. So ID 2020 has a website where they're talking about the certification mark to buy or sell and to prove your status of what you've taken within your body. So I actually watched a video back in, I believe, 2020 or 2021, where they were discussing this with the CEO of ID 2020 on how they would like it. So when somebody comes and works for them, they want to know their status of what they've taken within their body to prove they're safe to work with. And in order to buy or sell, to prove to the community around them that they're also safe to be in the community. So, and they're calling this within ID 2020 the certification mark. So I find that very interesting where they're already using these terms, the mark which we see in Bible prophecy. So they want a legal identity for all, but in birth registration by 2030. So that's another number we see. Basically, if you're guilty of wrong thinking, you will see your social credit score dip, meaning you will be banned from getting loans or the best housing, jobs, educational opportunities, and so on. We've talked about that in the past.
Right, but they can kind of predict when the wrong thinking by just like looking at social media, everything that we're doing, and surmise how we're thinking, what we're thinking.
So Guterres has issued. I call Guterres the world's false prophet. So he's not the false prophet of the Bible. There's a lot of false prophets, but he said in January 2025 at the World Economic Forum, what we are seeing today, sea level rise, heat waves, floods, storms, droughts, and wildfires, are just a preview of the horror movie to come. So they're telling you that, and back in 2023, they said that getting to 2030, there will be tribulation to come. That they made that in a statement in a poem that was addressed at the United Nations. So I find it very interesting that these false prophets are kind of telling you a timeline of when these events will take place.
Right, and it's not just him, but like Bill Gates says, he's another pandemic is imminent, and the chance of a natural pandemic in the next 4 years is. I mean, it's like they're constantly saying things like that, and then Bill Gates is also saying that he sees a major war very soon. It's you can tell what their plans are.
And I find it very interesting. The Bible says in prophecy, like, such as the third of the waters will turn bitter like wormwood, and people will die because of the bitter waters. And so NASA has predicted there's a god of destruction coming by 2029. It's called the asteroid Apophis. It's supposed to come, I believe, in April 13th of 2029. So they're going to shoot up a rocket to try to possibly divert this asteroid at that time. And what possibly can go wrong? but I find it interesting they're calling it the god of destruction. And then December 2032, approximately, because these dates are changing, there's a 1 in 63 chance that another asteroid will come and hit the Earth. And in Bible prophecy, once again, we see a mighty angel takes a stone and throws it into the sea, destroying the great city of Babylon. So I find that very, very interesting that we have these possible timelines of these asteroids coming that may be predicting approximately the time of these events.
Definitely. And then, of course, when they talk about like God of destruction, meanwhile, they have that symbol of Shiva in front of CERN and World Health Organization, which is talking about destruction.
So there's a plan to study this asteroid that's coming in 2029, and the European Space Agency will have a rapid mission for space safety and will launch in April of 2028. The spacecraft will rendezvous with the asteroid in February of 2029 and accompany it during its flyby across the Atlantic Ocean. In this event, they want to learn how to deflect asteroids.
I mean, when you say what could go wrong, what could go wrong with all
But
of that?
they're going to aim it right towards Earth by accident. So it could possibly. I'm not, obviously, we don't know yet,
Right.
but that's appears to be where they're headed with this. They want to deflect this thing and get it to move away from Earth. In one accident, way out now, 32,000 kilometers from Earth, could send this thing really into the Earth. So ultimately, they don't believe God is in control, and man has to be in control of the universe, which is being pushed by none other than King Charles.
Okay, now Craig, when you make that comment, there's some people that they're just seeing you for the first time. How could you say that about King Charles? They just think he's doing nothing.
King Charles has his seal of the Terra Carta, which puts him as king of the whole world, and he has his seal of the Astra Carta, which states that he is taking care of everything surrounding the Earth within the universe. So it's his mission to take care of the universe is what he is pushing. So basically, he's saying, "I'm the Antichrist. I'm going to control the world. I'm going to control the universe."
Okay, but again, people are going to go, but nobody's listening to him.
Not yet, because he's a nobody, because he has no power. But the Bible says that the world will give him his power. So beginning Revelation 6:2, Daniel 9:27 is when he's given that power. So he has to confirm a covenant, and then that power is given to him.
Right, and I'm going to put a link in the description of a different interview that you did with me where you showed all the reasons why you believe he's the Antichrist, and there were a zillion reasons. And for anyone, saying, "Oh no, he can't be," well, watch that first, and then if you know of anyone else who has that many reasons that they could be the Antichrist, let us know. But keep on going, Craig.
So basically, we have a covenant of many. I'm not going to say this is the covenant of many, but we have a covenant of many coming November 21st at COP30 in Belém, Para, Brazil. So I want to specify that Belém is the Portuguese word for the city of Bethlehem. So they want to confirm this covenant for the 30th time, Agenda 2030, within the city of Bethlehem, within the Amazon, because the Amazon is important to the whole world.
Because of the whole thing with climate
With the whole thing
control.
with climate change.
Okay, now if people say, yeah, but we've had these other COP meetings, what has changed? Or what's been implemented?
What's been implemented is they've taken your gas powered lawnmowers off the market. So it's to get a push mower to mow your lawn, it's extremely hard to do. In California, you cannot get a gas powered blower, a weed eater, or even a generator to produce your own electricity. So these things are being implemented. State of Washington's a little bit behind. State of Oregon's a little bit behind California, but this is being implemented nationally and throughout the whole world, especially in your higher end countries. Lower end countries are behind in this matter.
Right, and other changes that we've seen is just, like a push for people eating less meat and then, we keep on hearing like
Getting rid of your chickens. So if you go to Walmart, you have to be very, very careful what you buy, or you can buy meat that isn't actually meat. So I actually did that, and I bought meat. It's like, oh, it's chicken. So I bought the chicken, took it home, and then read the label when I got home and realized it was fake chicken. So I gave it to my cats and my dog, and they refused to eat it too. So
smart animals.
Yeah, my animals are smarter than some humans. Try to throw it away.
Right, but and then we also see the push for with the farmers, they're not allowed to do a lot of things that that are healthy for plants and animals. They're just pushing all these things, so we won't have healthy food.
Yeah, it's a lot of GMO food. So the labels now on the food, they're telling you if it's bad food. So I would say, I don't know, it's kind of getting hard to shop after you read all the labels. Like most of the food on the markets is not healthy for you. And if you buy your fruits and vegetables and have been sprayed with all the chemicals, and your meats are grass fed, and your eggs are pasture raised chickens and not chickens that are in a cage all their life, then you're going to have a better food. I know that because I used to have raised chickens. So your wild chickens have a darker yolk than your chickens the eggs that they sell at the store, which have a really light yellow yolk.
So yeah, it's better to find some local farmers. And even I found this out because I do eat a lot of organic fruit and vegetables, and now I'm finding out that they're spraying it with this appeal stuff, maybe APEEL, and that's chemicals. So never ends with them. Yeah.
Well, Bill Gates thinks there's another pandemic that's imminent, and he says there's a 10 to 15% chance that there'll be another one within the next 4 years, and that global unrest could spark a major war with another pandemic within the next 25 years. So he's kind of telling with a broad stroke, saying between the next 4 and 25 years, there's a greater one coming. But he's been prophesying this for a long time. So he's another one of these false prophets, but their prophecies seem to come to pass because
Well, right.
they want this to happen to lower the world's population.
Right, right. And then, with predictive programming, in their movies, the movie Epidemic 2024, it was talking about lockdown. So is that part of their agenda? We'll see.
We'll see. And also, you had Battlefield 2025. So there's another predictive planning that there's a war on grand scale in 2025. And then there's Diana Cooper's book, The 7 Years of Transition to 2032. So they're telling you that there's a golden age coming by 2032, and there's 7 years to that event.
Okay, and their golden age is different from Trump's golden age.
Yeah, so Trump says it begins right now in America, and the New Age movement believes it's implemented by 2032, which is really the copycat, possibly, for Jesus Christ setting up his millennial kingdom. And then they say that all the signs are in the stars, and maybe they are because there is the gospel in the stars. So maybe, but they've still corrupted the gospel in the stars to believe all this. What is it? Astrology, astronomy.
Right, right.
Using astrology and astronomy.
Right,
So
there's truth in the stars, but not with astrology. But yep.
yeah, and then so there's another predictive programming that came by way of the Lucas Trust and Alice Bailey. So the Lucas Trust was first called the Lucifer Trust, so that I'll emphasize that. And by 2025, she said that there's a new kingdom way of that everything will change in 2025. 2025 is the cutoff date for humanity to recognize that we are divine souls. If we cannot, then a catastrophe like Atlantis will necessarily follow. So she believed that there'll be a catastrophe that will follow 2025 if we don't recognize that we are divine souls, a God within ourselves.
Huh, and that's with Lucis Trust. How long ago was that?
Yes, with Alice Bailey. So that's basically who's behind the United Nations.
So how many years ago was that said?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, but that would have been a while ago. So for
That's a
them to
while
be
ago.
talking,
Yeah,
yeah, for them to be
wow.
talking about the year 2025.
So I find that very, very interesting. Here we have this predictive programming once again for 2025 through none other than the Lucifer Trust. All this is calling for a planned catastrophe in 2025. And to sum it all up, biblically speaking, it's lawlessness. And so the man of lawlessness is going to arrive here soon and reveal himself to the world. Now, to us Christians, we should know who he is if we are diligent and study, but the world's not going to know who he is until he's revealed.
So since you think King Charles is the Antichrist, so you think that he's really going to reveal himself pretty soon?
He'd have to reveal himself on the first or second day of a new moon in order to fit the calendar events of the tribulation. So we have a match November 21st. I'm not saying that is the match, but we have a potential match on that day being a new moon. And it fits the timeline predicted in scripture of the season, of the agricultural season. So it's the end of the agriculture season at that time. We're in is the 7th month. So usually like where I live in Israel, most agriculture is completed around Thanksgiving. So the agriculture this time of year would end theoretically around Thanksgiving.
Now, why does he have to reveal himself at that time?
King Charles can only have speaking engagements or speak at certain events throughout the year. So the COP program is one event he can speak at. The other event is directly to his government, I think once a year, and his Christmas address at the end of the year. So he basically has 3 to 4 major speaking commitments throughout the year that he can partake in, and that's it, because he has no power beyond that. So we have a match for this year, and we'll see how it plays out in the coming months. But anyways, through the techno music, once again, within Brazil, they're preparing for this COP30 event in Belém, using the symbol of a triangle. So they're using a triangle with the world inside. And that symbolism was used in a book about Prince Charles back in 2010 by Joan Vion. And it's called Global Straitjacket. And this is what the UN wants to implement in order to control the world. And now to push this COP30 event, they're using that exact same symbol in Brazil through the techno musician Alok. And so Alok has these pyramid shows going on stating the future is ancestral, and it's a global call for sustainability at COP30. And at his first event, he had 1 million people show up at his concert in Belém, Brazil.
Okay, and so interesting that's their symbol, but it's interesting that Joan Vion had said something about that because she
Yeah,
also,
you can picture her book right there. And then picture what's going on in Belém, and it's this exact same symbol.
right, and Joan Vion also thought that that King
Prince Charles,
Charles
that Prince Charles would be the
is
Antichrist. And
right.
she had insider information because she worked as a reporter within the UN. So she was going to these meetings, these COP meetings, for several years, and saw what Prince Charles at that time was pushing in a backdoor approach. So we have the experienced climate negotiator for this event is Andre Correa do Lago. He will preside over the COP30 summit. He will meet with, like I said, he'll meet with King Charles here shortly. And he's expected to draw scores of world leaders to Brazil, but not including Donald Trump. So Donald Trump probably won't go to this event. We'll see. Because he's declared withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, even though we will have our people there. So, and Israel will also play a huge role at this event, revealing their innovation for the future. So, as reported from the World Economic Forum, when anybody steps back from this momentum, this COP momentum, it creates a vacuum where others will benefit from. In other words, this potentially opens the door for the Antichrist to come in and confirm this covenant at the end of COP, whatever that covenant is, and to strengthen it among all parties, and that would include the United States. COP30 is set to be the most powerful and most consequential climate summit in history. Their plan is to use fresh targets under the Paris Agreement to cut greenhouse gas emissions in line of limiting global temperature rises of 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So we already know Donald Trump's going to react to this and say no, but he's still pushing the AI side of that.
Right,
So
which people would say he has to because he has to compete with other nations,
yeah,
but
he has to compete against China and the UK.
right, but still the implications of AI are not great. So, but yeah,
So what would happen at COP30 is the question, and the answers are the countries will update their NDCs, their contributions to the 2030 agenda, and there will be discussions in the early warning of all initiative, which aims to improve national early warning signs of disastrous events. So they're getting ready for the tribulation. And there will be discussions on the Global Shield, the G20 initiative to protect people from extreme weather events that are coming during the tribulation. And this is right on their website. So not the tribulation, but they're telling you at the UN level, there is tribulation to come. And there will be a focus on nature and land use as a part of climate action, which comes by way of none other than King Charles through the group Pollination and his Terra Carta mandate.
right of controlling land
And
and
water. And peace and security are important considerations at COP30, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So and Brazil is also pushing for this two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians as well. So this may be infiltrated within this at COP30. COP30 is a chance to address the security challenges that climate change poses. So all this is a result, these conflicts in the Middle East, they say, are a result of climate change. And to ensure that the voices of the vulnerable communities are heard and to unveil opportunities for peace. They have produced a document they're going to talk about on June 2nd and through the 4th at the UN General Assembly. And it's called the Peaceful Settlement for the Question of Palestine.
before we get to that, can you comment about Trump and Gaza?
To understand Trump, we have to know his art of the deal from 1987. Trump's world begins with an extreme demand so outrageous that he pushes what was previous thought in the previous narrative that we thought was going to be accomplished. When a setback comes, and it will, he will say, let's negotiate something less extreme. And in his mind, he will still want to have a big win because his goal is to force the neighboring Arab countries to play a greater role in what's to come.
Do you think that this can slow down the UN plans that you're about to talk about?
Possibly it could. So it's going to slow down things until these Arabs are able to work together on a plan. So that's one way to look at it, but it also could speed things up for this June event. So what Trump is
Okay.
doing, he is declaring what he wants 100%, and he's willing to settle for 50% and demand the whole world, embrace a solution that he's willing to go along with. He also has 4 weeks until he's going to reveal another plan to annex the West Bank. So that's going to be another extreme plan that he's going to release in March. Ultimately, there's a two-state solution. And no matter how long it takes to achieve this, we know the demands are rejected at the beginning and midpoint of the tribulation. For it says in Ezekiel 38:11, at a time of peace you will say, we will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will go to a peaceful people and dwell safely, all of them without walls and having neither bars nor gates. So we know some sort of solution must occur for this Ezekiel 38 war to begin. And then it says in Matthew 24:16, this is what happens at the midpoint of the tribulation. Let all those in Judea flee into the mountains when they see the abomination of desolation. So that's when the Arabs will demand that land in Judea, it belongs to them. So we're going to see a two-state solution of some sort, apparently. And Donald Trump wants perhaps two or three things out of this solution. So what we are probably going to witness here in the next few weeks is possibly a declaration for all faiths, and that's a declaration to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And then we have to ask, what does the U.S. get out of this? And we'll probably see a strong alliance between the USA and Israel on AI, artificial intelligence, as the game changer from now to 2030 and beyond. And Donald Trump has said that the Israelis are very smart people, and he wants to bring them in within his plan. So I find that very, very interesting. And then we have to remember we have this big question of Gaza. And Donald Trump has said that it's a premier in regards to waterfront property. So he wants to rebuild Gaza, but we're probably going to see this new smart city plan that's being likely talked about to rebuild Gaza as this for the world. So it's not going to be just for Palestinians, but for everyone. So I don't know if they're going to have any success along those lines, but it's something to watch.
Ah, interesting. But then who's pushing that 15-minute city?
That's the question. Is the USA going to push it, or is somebody else going to push it? In 2025, you and I, we talked about 2025 quite a bit in the past, but we are headed into a season of war. And so this war is both spiritual, economic, and political. So it's not a war fought as a regular battle, but in these three realms. But we have, as Christians, we have a God of war, and he knows exactly how to strategize against these men who want to divide his land. And ultimately, whatever solution comes as this announcement divides God's land. And so if the USA wants to take over this land, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing, because it says when Jesus comes back, he's going to judge those who divided up his land. We should be mentally and spiritually prepared for what we see in 2025. And we'll likely have a lot of excitement here in the weeks to come. But we know God will triumphantly lead his people that believe in him and Israel, as far as that's concerned. God has a plan for all of us. And we know the end of the story. The one who sits in the heavens laughs, and he will have them in derision. Jesus is coming back. In the end, he shall prevail.
All right, so now explain the June UN plans.
They want to reaffirm that the illegality of the Israeli settlement activities within their own country and all other unilateral measures aimed at altering the demographic composition within Israel. And they're going to condemn any use of force used against the Palestinian civilians in violation of international law.
That's the document that you found that's for June?
Yeah, for June 2nd through the 4th at the UN General Assembly.
Okay.
At the same time as this event in Hamburg, there's also a sustainability conference going on in Germany on addressing the United Nations, the 17 goals. So there's going to be a push for the 17 goals to be enacted June 2nd through the 3rd. At the same time, this is happening on the Palestinian front at the UN General Assembly in New York.
And for those who haven't watched you before, we're putting up what the 17 goals are, and that's all connected with King Charles too.
The UN reiterates its call for the achievement without delay of a comprehensive and just and lasting peace in the Middle East on the basis of the relevant United Nations resolutions, including the Security Council resolution for a two-state solution within recognized borders based on the pre-1967 borders. They want Israel to get smaller. The UN demands that Israel, the occupying power over their own country, I'm adding that part, comply strictly with its obligations under international law, as well as measures aimed at modifying the demographic composition of any parts of the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. So they want East Jerusalem to be given to the Palestinians. The UN stresses the need in particular for an immediate halt to all settlement activities. Basically, they're saying that Israel cannot build any more within Samaria and East Jerusalem. The UN reaffirms its commitment in accordance with international law to its two-state solution of Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. Here's these terms again. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Within the recognized borders based on the pre-1967 borders. The UN calls for the withdrawal of Israel from all Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem. I can't believe this is what they're doing.
Right, right. No, and there's this whole meeting is going to be in June of pushing all of this.
Yeah, June
I mean,
2nd to the 4th.
right. So we're really speeding up with Bible prophecy.
It says it will be webcast, so we will see that online come June 2nd through the 4th. Maybe we'll have to report on it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is like major Bible prophecy.
Yeah, major, because in the middle of the week, of the 7-year week, we see that those within Samaria and East Jerusalem have to flee to the mountains. And so this obviously is implemented to some degree or forced, especially within the middle of the week, of Daniel's 70th week. So how much Israel sides with it beforehand, I don't know. But they're basically being forced into this by the whole world. So the UN has this calendar. You can find it on focus2030.org of all the major events for the 2025 agenda. So there's too many to mention, but March 5th through the 7th, there's the World Sustainable Development Summit in New Delhi, India. April 7th is World Health Day. So we'll have a lot of discussion on the coming pandemics.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, as far as India, I thought that King Charles just went to India to meet with some leaders there.
Yes, he did recently. India is pushing all countries are pushing the agenda in one form or another. The United States may not be pushed through at the government level under Donald Trump, but it's being pushed through the companies. So Microsoft, all your major grocery
corporations, yeah.
April 7th through the 11th is the 58th Commission on Population and Development, New York at the United Nations. So once more population control. September 10th through the 11th is the International Conference on Sustainable Development, Rome, Italy. This will be more likely have Pope Francis involved in this event. In fact, I know the Vatican will be involved in this event based on the time of year. So we have the false prophet, this religious false prophet pushing this sustainable development. And then September 25th is the 10th anniversary of the 2030 agenda. So there'll be a big event at the UN on September 25th. And November 10th to the 21st, with the confirming of the covenant for the 30th time being kicked down the road, is the UN Climate Change Conference in Bethlehem, Brazil. I find that very interesting that it's in a city called Bethlehem, where basically God came down and his son was born, which strengthened really his covenant with Abraham and his elect us Christians to live with him. But here we have a satanic agenda that's copycatting that with the same name, the city of Bethlehem, Belem. So this is the new moon covenant that will happen on the 21st of November. And then December 12th, we have the 10th anniversary of the Paris Climate Agreement. So those are some of the highlights of this year calendar.
Okay, and Craig, what website was that from, the list of some of that highlights?
Focus2030.org. At this event, September 10th to the 11th, It reminds me of the portals, the 5 portals that were opened by Pope Francis earlier this year. So he opened all these portals to open up a year of Jubilee. So he wants in 2025 debt to be forgiven worldwide. And the Vatican says these portals are directly linked to what will happen at COP30.
Okay, and and the meeting in September again is
September 10th to the 11th, Rome, Italy, on sustainable development. But there's all these portals that he opened up is preparing for the event COP30.
right now. Anything else you want to say as far as those portals? What some of them were, or
Well, the most interesting one was he opened the door to the prison just to quote unquote set the captives free. So here we have this false prophet using the terms, biblical terms, once again, of setting the captives free, what Jesus Christ does for our salvation.
okay,
So this event really at COP30 is to quote unquote set the captives free and for climate. So it's to save the world from their bogus climate change, which we can agree on Trump. There's no climate change going on.
right? No, he's definitely not interested in it. Craig, thank you for the update. Now, where can people find you or and find their your updates?
My updates are on my Facebook page, Rapture Watchers by Craig Bong on Facebook. I'm also at Craig Bong 1573 YouTube. It's not been updated for a while, but I will be updating that from now on as we approach this COP event. And also Craig Bong on my personal Facebook page.
Yep, and I'll have some of those links in the description. Okay, well, thank you so much.